Ahoy, mateys, and welcome back to Captain Keaton. Today I'm joined by a welcome guest. He was here for a link to the past, and we're going to link to the present. It's Daniel Santos here for Link's Awakening. Welcome back, Daniel Santos.
Hey, thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend.
Yes, very good to have you back. I'm very excited to talk about Link's Awakening. I remember you had some positive things to say. Before we get into it, just go ahead, check out Daniel Santos here on the YouTube, subscribe, and look forward to a great interview on the Awakening of Link. What's going on lately, Daniel?
Pretty good. I've been playing actually a lot of Final Fantasy V, specifically. I played the PS1 port that they released a while back, but that port was not that great, and I think I lost my save. So now that the Pixel remaster, I was like, it's time, and I'm like in the last stretch of the game and having a good time with it.
You know, I bought all those PS1 Final Fantasy games because I know you can play at least 8 of them on there. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And yes. I don't think I played any of them except for 9. And I also lost my save data on that game.
Bummer. I know how that feels. I remember one day my PS2 asked me, "Do you want to format your memory card?" And I didn't understand what that meant. So I just said, "Okay, sure." And then all my saves were gone. And I was like, so that was a sad day. And I had 2 memory cards, and of course it had to be the one with the most saves on it. So that was rough.
Yeah, that sucks. I'll keep that in mind if I use my memory card. I was using a knockoff. It was like this third party, I don't know what company. Let's just say Hyperkin or something, or Mad Cats, that it actually had a button on it and you could record a 30-second audio bit of something and then just play it. I have no idea why, but it lost the data.
Why? That's so bizarre. Mad Cats was the worst back in the day. I remember I had a couple of their controllers and they were junk. They did not work.
What do you do with all your knockoff controllers?
I think I eventually just sold them to GameStop or something at the time because they so I remember this is such a hyper specific issue, but I remember in Onimusha 2 when I tried playing through that game with a Mad Catz controller, when you hold down the lock-on button, it's supposed to also charge your weapon. Your weapon will start glowing. For whatever reason, I don't know why, it did not work with that controller. And I remember one day I went to my cousin's house or something, and we started playing the game, and the weapon started charging up. And I was like, what the hell? Because he had a regular controller. And I was like, what is this? It was this mechanic I had no idea was even in the game. It was ridiculous. All because that controller just I think it might be because the PS2 controllers had the pressure sensitivity. And I think that controller didn't have the pressure sensitivity. And that's why the mechanic didn't work. That's my working theory.
There we go. Pressure sensitivity. Yeah, sometimes you just got to go first party with these things. You can't take the cheap route.
Yeah, not like my parents knew at the time. They were just like, "Oh, kid needs a controller. Here you go."
Yeah.
It's a piece of crap.
Yeah, I treat them like crap. I just leave them in the laundry room. I have no use for. I have so many controllers just lying around. It's I don't want these at all, and GameStop won't buy them. Nobody wants them. So
nobody wants them. Yeah, no. At this point, I almost exclusively go first party. I just unless it's a controller that gets rave reviews and people are assuring me oh no, this is a good one. This is solidly built. Nine times out of 10, though, I'm gonna go first party because you can trust that they're gonna work.
I have a controller hot take. It is about a rave
Okay.
review controller. But
Hmm.
it's not like the main controller. It's the Wavebird for the GameCube.
Okay. Not a fan?
I have had one and it never registered inputs. You had to be like sitting right in
Mm.
front of the TV. And so that kind of defeated the point of being wireless. And even then, like it just missed my inputs. When you're playing something like Smash Brothers, like real great, you know?
Ah, yeah. I remember the commercial for that. I remember it was like a dude was like on the toilet and he was like playing the Wavebird with the like his TV in the other room. But yeah, I never used a Wavebird, so that's interesting.
Most people are very fond of the thing, so it's like I don't know. I always feel kind of like the the only one. Am
I
I
have
the
a hotter
crazy one?
take. I don't think I have a hotter take. I don't think the GameCube controller is very good.
I can agree with that.
Like I think it's solidly built. Like I do think that like when you're holding in your hands and you're pressing the buttons, it feels good. My biggest issue is I think the C stick is not very comfortable. The tiny D-pad, you're not playing any 2D platformers with that. And to be fair, there weren't a lot of those on the Cube, but even still, that's no excuse to have such a tiny, crummy little D-pad. It's also missing two buttons. You only have the one pause button, and you don't have four shoulder buttons. You only have three. So some odd design choices. I'm not saying it's a bad controller, but it's kind of odd design made it so that certain games, especially like multi-platform games, they had to like work around the limitations.
I
Not a
think I
fan. Not a fan of that.
prefer the N64 joystick to the GameCube joystick. Where do you stand there?
Interesting. Interesting. I don't know. I think I would have to like because it's been a hot minute since I touched the N64 controller, which I think is overhated. I think people are like, "Ooh, do I need three hands?" No, of course you don't need three hands. You play like this or you play like this. That's it. Like it's not that complicated. But I think at the time it was like the Wild West of gaming. So I feel like the controller worked for the games that it was made for. And that's what matters the most. But
Yeah.
I could see why people didn't like it because it is kind of like, especially now in retrospect, it is kind of awkward. But I don't know. When I played my N64 games as a kid, they worked and I had a good time with them, and I think that's what matters. Like I think that here's a big example. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. When you are playing on the ocarina, the C buttons were perfect.
Yeah.
Every time they ported Ocarina of Time to anything else, it never felt as good to play the ocarina compared to playing it with the C. I remember I would have it like I knew the songs by heart, and I would just go like, "Brrr, I'm done," and I had the song like I would just belt it out perfectly. I could never get it that good in any other version of the game.
A little Zelda analogy. I like it. I like where your mind's headed. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, would I rather play Ocarina today? Same game, different inputs, N64 controller or GameCube? I think I would go N64. I feel like N64 though, you need the Rumble pack.
See, when I grew up, I didn't really have the Rumble Pack, so for me, it's like, okay,
Whatever, yeah.
I didn't really. Yeah, for me, it's like whatever. But
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
I think the GameCube controller might have one built in. I don't know. I don't remember. It's been too long.
Did the GameCube controller have vibration? I don't even remember. Yeah, I don't even remember if it did or not.
DualShock did. Sony did.
Yeah, except for the PS3. Well, at first, there was the six-axis controller, And they were like, we don't have Rumble anymore, but you can like do this. And everyone's like, we hate that. That sucks. No games used it. I remember the only time there was a game that used that functionality that I felt like was kind of neat was in Resistance Fall of Man. If you were on fire, you could shake the controller to get rid of the fire on your character's person, which I thought was like, hey, that kind of makes sense, right? But like most other games would have you like, oh, you can fly the plane by like, and that it never worked. It always sucked. It was always a pain in the butt. But eventually they,
it's interesting to
they
hear
wised
about like
up
the
and released it.
features, like right, like you use it as like a gameplay mechanic, but to me it was always just like a add-on tension. Like let's say like the cemetery is going to explode in Ocarina, and you would feel that on your controller and start shaking, and you feel the tension. It doesn't really have like a function, but just to enhance the level of like whatever mood they're going for.
Immersion.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, any updates as far as Silent Hill or other video projects you're working on lately?
Yeah, I'm still chipping away at that Silent Hill 2 video just because that's going to be a very like heady and dense sort of analysis. So I'm just making sure that I have all my ducks in a row as far as that's concerned. Not really a project per se, but I have been like dabbling with the idea of possibly like doing a little bit of streaming just to do, just to have something, just have some activity on the channel, because I tend to have like these long stretches without releasing. So I think it might be a good idea, like when I have like sometimes like, hey, let me just, stream a game or something, chat and chill out.
Any games that you particularly want to stream?
Well, if I stream this month, since we are in the month of October, I think it would make sense to do something spoopy, So I might do the original Silent Hill, not 2, the first one, just to remind people that game still holds up. That game is still a classic. So that's like the first one that comes to mind for me. Like I'd really like to stream that game and kind of like extol its virtues and really help you, like, because I feel like sometimes with younger players, not all of them obviously, but like a lot of younger players, they're like, oh, I don't want to go back and play those old games. They look kind of old and jank and clunky, whatever. And it's like, you know what? That's valid if you feel that way. And if it's easier for you to appreciate it vicariously through me, that's totally fine. So I'd like to play that game and help people appreciate it more, and then they can hear me talk about what I like about it and kind of like go into the details of how the game was made. And because that game has a lot of crazy development stories. There was a guy that like slept in his office, like under his desk, to make sure that the FMVs in that game got finished. Like crazy work ethic.
Cool. Yeah, something to look forward to. Streams and essays. We love to see it. I actually was getting a conversation with a friend last night. He's more of a Sony guy, and he's like, what do you think about the Silent Hill remake? I'm like, oh, I still haven't played it, the original, so I can't really speak to it. He's like, yeah, no, I'm excited because, sometimes those old games don't hold up. So I think he was like making reference to the original. I was like, really? You think so? Because I don't know. And I was like, do you think like compared to like Resident Evil 1, like it's held up the same way or similarly? And so we had a discussion there. So even for people who played it back in the day, I think it's an interesting question too. Like, does my childhood game still speak to me this many years later?
I mean, I finished Silent Hills 1, 2, 3, and 4 like very recently. And I think those games still hold up. I've also been playing the Silent Hill 2 remake, and I will say that I think the remake is a good game for what it is. It's a respectable enough remake. That being said, 20 years from now, when people talk about the significance of Silent Hill 2, they're not going to be talking about the remake. They're going to be talking about the original. I feel like the original, particularly, it is both a game of its time, but it's also timeless. And I feel that the remake is of its time exclusively. I don't think it's timeless in the same way that the original Silent Hill 2 is. And again, that's not to knock the game. I don't envy Bloober Team. If I was hired to like remake a Stone Cold classic, I think I would quit because especially a game like Silent Hill 2, I would be like, nah, I don't want that on my head. I can't handle that. So very unenviable position. I think they did the best job that they could. I don't agree with every change that they've made. I don't agree with like all the creative decisions made. But I still think like, hey, you know what? They put together a good game and a solid remake, and that's cool. But I just don't agree with the notion that the original doesn't hold up. I beat it pretty recently, and that game is still great. I feel like Silent Hill 2 is still a masterpiece in ways that the remake doesn't quite capture.
Yeah, I feel that way about like Resident Evil 4 almost. Like originally I was questioning like, oh, I don't know if I'll have a reason to go back to 4, but I did end up playing 4 afterwards. I was like, wow, you know, that still feels really good to play through. That is still iconic, and I think it still has that kind of cheese factor that you know, it some of it's in the remake, but it feels a little more serious.
The thing I like about Resident Evil 4, the original and the remake, is that they feel different enough from each other that they feel like their own experiences. And I feel like the remake wasn't trying to replace the original. It just felt like, hey, the original is still a great game. Here's like a modern, fresh take on it, rather than, oh, you don't need to play the original anymore. Here's this remake. That wasn't the vibe that I got from it. So that's not necessarily saying that that's the case with the Silent Hill 2 remake. I don't think even though some people are saying that, and I don't agree with them, I don't feel that the Silent Hill 2 remake is trying to replace the original. And I think that's the best kind of remake, where it's its own experience, separate from the original, and both can exist with each other.
They can coexist harmoniously. It's a relevant topic for today too, which we'll get to. So very exciting.
For sure.
Let's get to it. It's Link's Awakening. He's been sleeping. It's time to wake up. Link, go to school. Daniel Santos, what is your first exposure to The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening?
So this is tricky because I would have to say, like, technically speaking, my first exposure was probably seeing the box art at a Toys R Us and wanting to get it and not getting it. I had a pitiful Game Boy collection as a kid. I want to say that by the end, before I moved on to like the Game Boy Advance and didn't really get any other Game Boy games, I think the last few games I had were a really crappy licensed Godzilla game, a really crappy Batman game, Pokemon Blue and Yellow, because every kid had Pokemon, the Game Boy version of DuckTales, which, you know, great game, and Conker's Pocket Tales, which was a weird, like, adventure style, almost Zelda style, but not really nearly as good adventure game where you play as Conker before the Bad Fur Day rebranding. So it was still like light and cute and fun, as opposed to like him drinking and vomiting and pissing all over the place. And that was it. So I want to say, like, I didn't actually get a chance to play Link's Awakening until I think I may have emulated it, or maybe the I know for sure I downloaded it on my 3DS. I bought the 3DS version, and I don't think I finished those versions for whatever reason. And then eventually, when they came out with the Switch remake, I bought that, and then I beat that version. So that is my that is my whole like experience with Link's Awakening. Very strange, very like touch and go until eventually like okay, finally able to beat it.
Wow, that's interesting. I did own, I want to say the Game Boy version back in the day, just because I remember it in monochrome. They did have a Game Boy version in '93, and then DX was the Game Boy Color version in '98. But I seem to remember the original for some reason. I had a manual floating around. But I did also, when the 3DS came out, I also got the Link's Awakening game. I feel like it's a game a lot of people downloaded to their 3DS because everybody I talked to, like with their 3DS, seemed to have downloaded Link's Awakening. So I'm like wondering if it was like a promotion or something, like a Club Nintendo thing.
Not no, at least not for me. Like I just got it because I'm a Zelda fan. I'm like I plan on playing it, so I got it. I also got like Oracle of Ages and Seasons as well on it. So yeah, it was just hey, I love Zelda. I want to play all the good Zelda games.
The 3DS was a Zelda powerhouse. Like you could have played NES 1, 2. Later you would be able to get Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons. Then you also have the Ocarina, Majora's Mask, Link Between Worlds. It's I'm probably missing.
It was technically also
Four Swords.
It was backwards compatible with the original DS, so you could play all the DS Zelda games as well.
Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks. So really, you're only missing at that point Minish Cap and I guess like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker and Skyward Sword. So
I don't think those would work.
No, probably not. Fit. I don't expect a GameCube game upwards on the 3DS. But I did buy that as well, and I think I played it, didn't finish it at the time, and then I played it and finished it later because I was like, oh, I owe it to myself to finish it this way. And I didn't think much of the game at the time. I felt like it was one of those games that everybody had loved so much and talked up its praises, right? They sing its praises like, oh, it's such a unique game. But I always compared it to the Oracle games, which I also grew up with. And I just thought that like those were handled really well from a gameplay perspective. And it wasn't until much later that I began to appreciate Link's Awakening for different reasons.
So I remember renting, it was either Oracle of Ages or Seasons. I don't remember which one specifically, but I do remember renting one of them and being able to play it for a bit. But because it was fairly puzzle heavy, I got stuck and could not finish it before I had to like return the game to Blockbuster.
Which do you remember which one was Ages Seasons?
I don't remember. It may have been the one with the blue cover. I'm not sure.
Ages, yeah.
I'm not sure which one. Okay, it might have been that one, but again, this was like I was like 12 or something, so I don't remember which one specifically.
I got stuck with a couple dungeons in Link's Awakening because I was trying to play it like, I guess, guerrilla style, like just try and like not look up anything, and I feel like there was a lot of like trade sequences and stuff, and like very specific things you had to do to get through it.
Yeah, and at the time, the internet wasn't as freely available like it is today. So it was a lot hard. Like if you got stuck, you either had to like just figure it out, get a guide, and that's it. Like you didn't have many options.
You had to suffer in the mysterious woods. I probably made it like 2 or 3 dungeons in. I can't even tell you. It's so long ago at this point too. But I think that's also kind of the fun of like that memory was just getting lost and getting stuck in the early game.
That's something that doesn't really happen nowadays, unless you make the concerted effort of like, okay, no, I'm not going to look it up. I'm just going to go in blind and I'm just going to, figure it out myself. But like, I think for a lot of people, there is that temptation of like, if you get frustrated, you're just like, oh my God, screw it. I'm just going to look it up, Like, but back then that didn't exist, right? Like, I know that if you go far back enough to like the early 90s or the late 80s, I think Nintendo had like their hotline, so you could, if you get stuck in a game, you could call them up. But that was expensive, so not really viable for most people. For the longest time, like getting stuck in a game meant that's it, you're done. Like a good example was for me the original Breath of Fire, which had this had both me and my dad, we were playing it together, completely stumped for the longest time. We just could not figure out what to do. Fast forward to about like, I want to say it was 2017, 2018, something like that. May have been a little sooner than that. They put it on the Switch, right? They added to like the SNES like lineup, and I'm like, oh, let me play this. Let me finally beat, because it's been nagging me for so long now. I'm like, I'm gonna beat Breath of Fire, and I did. And when I finally find out what the heck I was supposed to do to progress, I was like, no wonder me and my dad were stumped. We had to go to some deserted island in the game, and there was like a specific spot. Basically, we'll go like pixel hunting and dig up something, and that was like a key item that we need to progress. And I was like, how the hell were we supposed to figure that out? Like maybe there was some random like NPC or something that told you, but like that's just how it was back in the day.
Yeah, I think it's something that like a modern gamer couldn't like appreciate. Is like you could still have like played and enjoyed the game, but just gotten stuck as all hell. Like it was more common back then. I think we don't get stuck as much because of all these tools. And when we do, we either go like, well, let me look up the answer, or let me switch games. And I guess you would switch games back then too. I just think you were more patient with that process. Like you'd really try and exhaust your options, and the game either did or did not do a good job of explaining it to you.
I agree. And I think, yeah, you're right that we could switch games back then, but I think there was less games back then. It was harder to get your hands on a game back then. So you were less willing to just like, oh, let me just switch games. You're like more willing to stick with it because that was all you had, right? Like, what were you gonna play? Like something else that you've already beaten, or another game that you were stuck on? Like, the options were way more limited. So we were kind of forced to like, okay, we need to hunker down and figure this out.
That's true. Yeah. And the thing too is like when I think of the original Zelda, like, and what I've learned about it, because that's before my time, but the concept was you would get stuck and you would talk to people who were also playing the game in order to like figure out, oh, if you use the flute here, or if, I don't know, you go up 5 times in the Lost Woods, you'll make it to the next dungeon.
Mm.
And I felt like that was missing for me personally, like in my era of growing up with Zelda. Like, I don't think I met somebody who was like publicly a Zelda fan or played Zelda games until maybe I was like 17 or 18.
No, I feel that. I think it was similar for me. I think I had like one friend who liked Zelda growing up, and that was it. So, and the thing is, like, I was the one that knew everything about Link to the Past, and he didn't. So, like, I was the one helping him, as opposed to like, us helping each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's similar for me too. Because my friend got into Ocarina after the fact, and it was interesting for me too because I felt like, even back then, that was around the time of like I guess the 3DS and the Grezzo remake, and the question was like, can older gamers appreciate Ocarina of Time? Like even then, and that was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. But it was really refreshing to see him playing Ocarina of Time and enjoying it, as someone who didn't play it at the time. And I remember like coaching him through it and talking about those things. It's just really nice to see somebody enjoying my childhood game.
Actually, now that I think about it, that same friend, we played Ocarina of Time together as well. So that I think like I said, with A Link to the Past, I already like played it a bunch, so I was more so helping him. But we got Ocarina of Time at like the same time, so that was a game we were like playing together and helping each other out. So, and I remember we would go over to each other's houses and we would play the game together. I actually have like a really fun memory where like I remember going over to his house and we were sleeping over, and I think I had woken up much earlier than him, and I'm like, oh, let me just put in Ocarina of Time, and we were already at the end of the game, and I ended up beating the game, and I was like, oh snap, I beat Ocarina of Time, that's awesome, and I kind of just let it hang on like the end screen, and then I just waited for him to wake up, and then he saw the TV, he was like, you beat the game, like. And then I was like, yeah, it's awesome. And then I turned it off and then turned it back on. It's like, let's beat it together,
That's awesome. I won't probe too deep, but
yeah. No, yeah, it was definitely a fun memory. I think I did that a couple of times with a few other games with him. Like, I know I did that with Mega Man Legends as well, where that was a game we were both playing together. That was his game actually. And we loved playing that game. Mega Man Legends, so much fun. And I kind of did the same thing where I woke up early. I don't know. I was just an early riser, I guess. And he liked to sleep in. And did the same thing. Just had like the credit screen. I think for Legends it shows you like your stats or something. And yeah, did the same thing. It's like, look, I beat it. Let's do it again. Showed him how to beat the boss. So fun stuff.
Awesome. Link's Awakening, though. So you bought the 3DS game, didn't finish it. Mm-hmm. Do you remember how far you got, or roughly?
I want to say I at least did like the first dungeon or something, and I don't exactly remember why I was pulled away from it. I think I might have just been deep in the weeds of like some other game I was playing. I know for a fact that because the thing with when I got my 3DS was I had never owned a DS. So for me, it was a matter of like, okay, I have a lot of catching up to do with the DS, So I was playing not just like a lot of 3DS games on it. I was playing a lot of DS games that I missed out on. I beat 999, 9 hours, 9 doors, 9 persons, which I loved that game. I beat the 3 DS Castlevania games. I obviously picked up some 3DS games as well. Like I wanted to beat the Ocarina of Time remake. I played through Fire Emblem Awakening. So like there was like a bunch of games that I was playing on it and catching up on. So I picked up Link's Awakening with the intention of beating it at some point, but like I think I was just so caught up in like playing all these other games that I had missed out on that I just didn't get around to it.
Okay. Any interest in going back to the Game Boy or Game Boy Color versions?
Actually, so I don't know if you know about that. You probably do, but like, did you know that there's like kind of like a native PC version that came out not that long ago, like a few months back?
Yeah, so there's the HD version, and then there's another one that's just a patch to the original called Redux. I can't find a file for the remake. Nintendo did a cease and desist on it. It basically was inspired by the remake because like you can zoom out and the camera follows Link, and I think there's other adjustments, but that file has been
So
like unlocatable for me.
I have it.
Oh, but cool. That's a
But
good
yeah,
way to play it.
that's the yeah. So after beating the Switch version, I was like, this seems like a very cool way to go back and play the original. Like it's because it's the same graphics, but like you said, it has that really cool functionality where you can like zoom out. You could zoom out so far that like you can't even see Link anymore. Like
Hmm.
he's just like a tiny speck, which is pretty interesting. And it just seems like I said, just seems like a really like fun like version of the game.
Yeah, definitely. It
So
is a really good looking version. Yeah, I hope to play it too.
pixel perfect, pixel perfect, so clean and crisp. I love that. I love nice, sharp, like chunky pixels. That's my jam.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm kind of mad that Nintendo went so hard on that. I think it was like a week or two before they did their cease and desist.
Yeah, I wish Nintendo would just like ease up on that stuff. Like I understand to a certain extent, I guess, that's like, oh, it's our intellectual property and we need to protect it and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, who's it really hurting? Like this, it's not like this person's making any money off of it. They're just like, it was something made out of like pure love for Zelda. Like it was so pure and innocent and wholesome. Just like they just love Zelda and they just wanted to like share this like cool version of the game that they concocted. Like that's all that it was. There was no need to like do a cease and desist for what? Like this free download? Like
Yeah,
come on.
they're not profiting off of that. The creator of the remake, they're doing it as, like you said, as a fun project. Whether they have like external, like, oh, if you want to support me, like here's an option, but it's not like you have to pay for this property. So I think that
Exactly.
they're playing the police too hard. Like I think if anything, they're only hurting themselves with that. I mean,
Agreed.
granted, like your remake, I don't know how many sold millions, so it's not like they need the money, but it's like all that can do is generate interest. It can only generate interest in the idea of like, oh well, now I do want to try a Link's Awakening with like the panning camera and the toy style. Like if they allowed that, I would be proud to support both. But I was very conflicted on getting the remake because of that. I was like, well, if you're gonna be so mean about like, people playing with the property, like maybe I won't get your
Oh,
game. I did, but I felt bad doing it.
yeah. I try to compartmentalize it like this. The people who are at Nintendo who are making those decisions are not the people making the games. And should the people making the games be punished for decisions out of their control? I think that decision is up to the individual, obviously. Like, if you feel like, you know, well, they still work at that company, so whatever, screw them. Like, okay, that's your prerogative. Personally speaking, those developers worked hard on the game, and again, they have nothing to do with that decision. I feel like they should still be rewarded for like the clear hard work, passion, dedication, that they put into that Link's Awakening remake.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, this Zelda is a historical artifact. Link's Awakening is a historical artifact. The Game Boy version as well. I think of like the Dragon Quest series, historical artifact. They remade Dragon Quest 1 from the ground up in Dreams, like that video game where you can create a game.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's cool.
And I think that's publicly accessible, no problems. Square Enix didn't cause any issues there, and yeah, that's a really cool way to go ahead and play it today. When a week after the game, and like this is not the first time they've done something like this. They did that with the Metroid game, the Metroid A2MR, and it's like, what do you guys do?
AM2R.
Right? It's like it's almost like a jealousy thing. Like, oh, like they see it as an attack on their property, like somebody saying they can do it better than we did. Because I know, and we'll get into the remake stuff. There are criticisms you can have, but I don't know.
I'm gonna be honest. They should be jealous because AM2R was definitely better than Samus Returns. And I beat both. I enjoyed both. That being said, if you were to ask me which one would you rather go back to, I gotta say AM2R. AM2R was the better game. which is funny to think about because that was primarily made by one guy compared to a team of professionals over at Mercury Steam.
Crazy.
That being said, Mercury Steam did a great job with Metroid Dread. I love Metroid Dread. I think that game is fantastic. But again, I gotta say it. Their remake of Metroid 2, it's not bad, but not great either. AM2R, pretty great.
Yeah. Link's Awakening. What memories do you have of your playthrough? So you primarily played it on Switch.
Yes. So I actually do have some interesting memories because when I was playing through the Switch remake, I was going through a move from my previous home to this current one. And the association for this place did not let us move in until we had like all our paperwork, and we basically had like nowhere to go for like I think like a couple of weeks. So it was like me and some family in like a hotel room for like a few weeks, and that kind of sucked. So I played a lot of the Switch remake during that time, and it helped get my mind off of like that mess. Right? That was a tough time for me. Like it was not great, but Link's Awakening came in clutch, and I will always appreciate it for that. Like I didn't have like while I was playing that game, I wasn't stressed out about the paperwork. I wasn't stressed out about like, the situation. I was just having a good time with the game. So that would have to be like my fondest memory of the game. Just like how it came in clutch for me and just helped me get through that situation.
So this game released September 2019. When did you play it?
I think it was 2021.
Okay.
So something like that. Yeah. 2021, 2022, around there. Yeah.
So it was like a COVID era like event for you, I guess, like the moving and everything.
Yes. Yeah. I think it was like a little bit after COVID. So like that was when things like settled down. But yeah, it wasn't like in the thick of it. It was like COVID stopped being such a big deal.
What were some of your most memorable parts of the game?
For me, I think it was coming to the realization that like everyone in the game, we could spoil it, right? Like,
Of course.
yeah, I figured, just wanted to ask, like, just coming to the realization, like, oh, everything here is like not real, and felt like some of the characters were like almost becoming cognizant of that, but not quite. Like, I think that added like a layer of depth to the game that was really unexpected for a Game Boy game. Like, and it made me feel bad about finishing the game almost, because it meant that all of the characters would disappear, right? Like, because they were all a dream. They weren't technically real. They were like this manifestation of the whale. And in a way, that kind of like, you could kind of look at it from a meta perspective as well, because like that's kind of every game in a sense. When you finish a game, those characters and that world and that story no longer exists anymore. But almost like if it was a dream. But, you can go back to it and you can like relive it as much as you want, but like the story can't progress after that. Like, it's done. So just kind of like thinking about the implications of that. Again, much much more thought-provoking than your average Zelda game. And not to like put down the stories of Zelda games, which are usually pretty solid, but like again, just like it felt more like Majora's Mask in that respect of just like, oh, there's something like much more thought-provoking, much deeper going on here than one would normally get out of your average Zelda game.
They do a really good job of building that up too. There's so many events, or every nightmare that you fight, like at the halfway mark, they start to insinuate you don't know what you're doing. The damage you're doing is irreversible. If you do this, this will all disappear. And I agree that I felt that as well. Like, maybe not as deeply as in like 3D Zelda games, for whatever reason, because we got more of like a charming like 8-bit 4-bit, I don't even know, art style on the Game Boy Color version.
Yeah, I don't know what bits the Game Boy is. I have no idea. I've never thought about it. I guess 8-bit. I don't know.
But it is really like heartfelt in a sense, because you have Mario characters. Like I'm looking at gameplay right now with Link with Bow Wow, the Chain Chomp, and it's like, do you want to sacrifice the poor Chain Chomp? No, you want to take Chain Chomp to the end, and they don't even let you natively anyway. But you do begin to like appreciate like certain characters in this game. Marin, she's a staple. Taran, he wakes you up, gives you the shield, and then he turns into a raccoon or something. There's like an animal village. How do you hate on animals, like these cute animals?
Yeah.
And even just like the ballads, the music that you learn throughout the game. I mean, the first track is really the deepest, your Ballad of the Windfish. And then after that, I don't even know what Mambo's Mambo is, or the Song of the Frogs. Those things are terrible. But I guess you do see Wart. So I never thought of it as a commentary on like what even a game is. So that's a pretty interesting take. But within this realm especially, yeah, like, do you want to be the one, Link? Do you want to destroy all of this? It's you. You're going to do it. But at the same time, they want you to do it, so you feel conflicted.
Yeah, kind of thinking about it as well, it reminds me a little bit of Shadow of the Colossus, because in that game as well, as you play through the game, I don't know about you, but like for me at least, playing through that game, start to feel more bad about what I'm doing as I play through the game. I don't know if Shadow of the Colossus, I don't know if like Fumito Ueda was specifically inspired by Link's Awakening, but like I could see it if he intuited that same like emotional connection and put that in Shadow of the Colossus as well, where like, you start to question the validity of your journey almost. Like, am I doing the right thing? Like, should I be doing this? But like, I'm the player. If I want to see the end, I have to keep going. And I think that's one of the really interesting things about video games as a medium, because like with books or movies, which have like linear narratives, it tells a story and that's it. I mean, I guess technically you could put a book down or pause a movie and not finish it, but like there is that extra layer of like agency that video games have, where like, no, you have to do the work to get to the end, right? Like the only work you need to do when watching a movie is sit your butt down and watch. The only work you need to do with a book is just read it. With a video game, you have to slay every monster, you have to figure out every puzzle, you need to beat every boss. And then as you're doing that, again, you could start to question, like, but am I doing the right thing? Do I want, like you were saying, like, do I really want Poochie to go away? Like, that sucks. And I think that's what makes this game really interesting. I think that's what makes this game really special compared to like other Zelda games. Others, I love Zelda, obviously. All the Zelda games are special in their own ways. But again, this is what makes Link's Awakening unique. And just because we were talking before about how A Link to the Past is about the hero's journey, and you may not necessarily feel like a hero by the end of Link's Awakening.
It's complicated because like I think there's some commentary too, like on dreams. Like you may not feel like it, but at the end of the day, you still save the Windfish. And like there's commentary in like the world of Zelda and the world of games, but also in the world of dreams. Like a dream is deceptive, right? You can have good dreams, you can have bad dreams, and even within a bad dream, there can be elements of good that you like. But at the end of the day, you wake up from the dream, and the dream is gone. And you don't have a choice. You have to end the dream. You know, you have to wake up. I feel like some of those good elements in this game are almost deceptive. It's like teasing you. It's candy. Yeah. Oh, it's a Zelda game with Mario characters. And
it's
Zelda
so
characters.
Fun to play. You know, like it's just a joy to explore, to like go into the dungeons. Like it's so much fun to play the game and to figure out the puzzles and to fight monsters and stuff and to get new equipment and all the typical Zelda stuff that is just so addictive and fun. So there is also that conflict of like, I'm having such a good time with the actual playing of the game, but the story is making me almost feel bad that I'm having a good time.
Definitely.
They were cooking. They were cooking with this one.
Yeah, this is great. Like more games should strive for this level of storytelling. Like simple. It's simple, but it's
Agreed.
Thoughtful, you know? And I really don't think you need all this exposition to make a good story. Now, I'm not saying this exposition in Link's Awakening, but like you don't need a lot in order to build something great.
Yeah, I mean, there are some games that do. Like, I think Disco Elysium, for example, is like quite possibly the greatest written game of all time. Like, I struggle to think of something that matches it. And that game is nothing but dialogue. It's nothing but like text. But at the same time, I also think that Ico and Shadow of the Colossus are also like masterpieces with barely any text. Like everything is conveyed, not literally everything, but like most of it is conveyed visually through how you play the game. They're like little clues in the environment to like the tiny bits of text that you do get. You can like kind of dissect it and, you know, like think about it. So like I definitely agree with you that like it definitely does depend on the game and what it's going for. But I do think that a problem that a lot of games have nowadays is that they are overwritten, right? Like even games that I love, you know, like sometimes I'll be like, did you need like 3 paragraphs just to tell me I need to go to point A and pick up this thing? You know what I mean? And Link's Awakening does not have that issue.
It's very disappointing for me that playing Echoes of Wisdom, which is replicating like this game's art style. So like I was very excited for Echoes of Wisdom as like a game in this art style that is a unique game and not like the same game, which I had held against this game for a long time, is not more like Link's Awakening in that way. It is very much overwritten and simplified. Like you've really boiled characters down to like simple elements of good or bad. There is nothing like thought-provoking there. It's almost like it's trying to be written for like a single-digit-year-old, which I don't really get the sense that Link's Awakening is. I think you can enjoy it, you know, as a young child, but I think it's also thought-provoking as an adult. Echoes of Wisdom is not that. And I kind of wish they did.
Oh, that's a shame.
Something more like this.
I picked up Echoes of Wisdom. I haven't tried it out yet. That's kind of a shame. I hope the game itself is still fun to play, though. Like, it seems like it's a good game outside of that.
Yeah, I think there are elements to appreciate. I'm stubborn, and I'm probably a minority in this way, but I just call it as I see it. So. And this is great. Like this is terrific. I didn't appreciate this as much at the time because I was holding other elements against it. I was holding things like puzzles and dungeon solving, which I thought were done better in like the Oracle of Ages game. But there are some really.
I still need to play. I still need to play those games. I still need to play Ages and Seasons. I was kind of like wondering if Grezzo was going to remake them in the same style of Link's Awakening, but it doesn't look like they're doing that.
Yeah, I would just go for it. And, Ages is the easier one puzzle wise. I think Seasons is a little convoluted.
Okay,
because Ages is more linked to the pasty, where it's like past present, but Seasons is like fall, winter, summer, spring as gameplay mechanics. And I think that can be complicated.
Okay. Well, it is. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's on the Switch now. So I'll definitely. That'll probably be like the next thing I play. The next Zelda game I play.
Awesome. All right. Do you want any thoughts on dungeons or combat in general?
So one thing I want to comment on is that while I do like the remake, one thing that I think would have been hard to replicate in the remake is how good the sword feels in the original. That's something that always stuck out to me, was just like there's just something about how Link swings his sword in the original version that feels like it's just peak game feel. I can't even describe it. It's hard for me to like put to words, but there's just the way he swings his sword is just like perfect. I even like the way he swings his sword in it better than like Link to the Past. Like there's just something about that animation and the sound effect, and the sprite art itself that just feels perfect. Like again, it's like I said it already, but like they were cooking with this game. Like they really knew what they were doing. It's probably one of the most like impressive like Game Boy games, or at least like original Game Boy games ever made. Like it's so good. And I really like the dungeons in this game because like even playing the Switch remake as an adult, I was kind of surprised by the fact that like some of the puzzles gave me not like a hard time, but like there were some where I was like, oh, I'm not sure what to do here, and it took me some time to figure out before I was like, okay, like, and it never felt like, because I hated in puzzle games where I was like, how the F was I supposed to figure that out, right? Like, what was that? Like I actually dropped a game. I want to go back to it because it's a sequel to 999, which I really liked. It's called Virtue's Last Reward. And like one of the first puzzles in that game, I was like banging my head on the wall trying to figure it out. I was like, what the hell is the solution? I actually figured out like how to get like a special item first, which required a different way to solve the puzzle. I got that first before I found like the intended solution. And I was like, what am I supposed to do here? And then I looked it up and I was like, what is this solution? I don't understand this. Never felt that way in Link's Awakening. All the puzzles made sense. It was super well designed. And I like in the remake how they kept the integrity of the screen transitions from the original. I think it was fine out in the overworld that they said, okay, the camera follows you. But I did like that they were like, no, the puzzles and stuff, that was designed a specific way in the original. And the dungeons were designed in this way for a reason. It's got to stay that way. So that was something I thought was really nice.
I've been playing the Game Boy and Game Boy Color versions back to back. And I've got my runtime down to 2 hours and 47 minutes for either, really. I played the Redux version.
Wow. Wow, that's quick.
And one of my favorite things to do is Rock's Feather spin attack. There is something irreplicable about a jumping spin attack. Like, I don't even know another Zelda game where you could do that, because this is like the first introduction of even like a jump in a Link in a Zelda game, like up to this point anyway, in '93, and you can cover so much ground, and your spin attack is stronger. It's basically it's the most OP move in the game. That, I mean, the boomerang's really good too. The arrows, if you can get the bow really quickly, it is incredibly satisfying. Even the moment you first get the sword. The moment you first get the sword, if you do it the traditional way, the way you're supposed to, you push out the little sea urchin with your shield, and then you go to get the sword, and then the owl starts talking to you, and then the second the owl stops talking, you spin attack, and it sends the sea urchin flying across the screen. And it is so satisfying that when you
Feels
pick up
good.
a piece of power, and your sword just becomes like this baseball bat where you swing it and then it just swings somebody across the screen. I really don't like when you get stuff like that. I don't feel it as much in the remake. It doesn't feel as smooth to me. So I personally,
Not as impactful.
right. From a gameplay standpoint, I personally lean more towards the Game Boy versions just because they are silky smooth.
So it's interesting you're playing through the original Game Boy version and the color version, because I saw a video by My Life in Gaming, and for like one like brief section of it, the guy was comparing the original Game Boy version and the Game Boy Color version. He was saying that like there are some minor differences, but there actually are some differences outside of just like filling everything with color. Like there are like a couple of tiles and sprites that are like that had to be modified a bit in order to like I guess get the color in. I don't know the specifics, but like he was just like showing the differences, and I was like, that's interesting, because you would think they would just be like 1-to-1 the same thing just with color now, but that's not entirely true. So I don't know if you may have noticed that when you were playing the game.
The biggest noticings for me, I mean, it's like the camera shop. You know, it's like that's where it was built for the Game Boy camera. So there's points where you take pictures with Link. So there's a couple cut scenes with Marin that are activatable. I had no idea until I played DX on stream. And I think that actually you can do those in the Game Boy version, but it just won't stop and like take a picture. A couple of...
I want to say that I don't know what album it was, but I want to say there was actually an album released with the album cover was like a Game Boy camera picture or something like that. And it was just like this kind of like monochrome kind of like splotchy mess or something, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
A couple of glitches I don't think are activatable in the same way in the Game Boy DX version. Like you can screen skip, which is how you can take Chain Chomp to the end. It's so satisfying to play the whole game with Chain Chomp on you. But I think there are different ways to work around it. People can play this game in under an hour, whether it's the Game Boy or Game Boy Color version. And yeah.
Speedrunners going crazy.
Yeah, and I'm not even with like, you know, the kind of Zelda speedrun I'm not interested in is one where people like break the game, so it's like you just start like panel warping, like.
Yeah, that's not interesting.
The glitchless runs can be done in under an hour still, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So, you know, I
remember seeing A Link to the Past, like being completed in like a few seconds. I was like,
who cares?
Whatever.
Yeah. Ocarina of Time, 3-minute run, who cares? Like, you know, okay, great, you can teleport in the Deku Tree, but that's not fun to watch because, like, that's not, well, for me anyway. If you like that, I would love to know why, but I don't.
Like, I think it's kind of neat, like, in Ocarina of Time, where, like, they have to do some crazy maneuver to get it to work. I think that's at least like interesting. It's like, okay, I need to be at this exact coordinates and I need to pick up this specific item to do this, that, and the other. Like, that's at least like, okay, that's kind of cool to watch, just to see them like explain the mechanics of it and to see it like done. Like, That's like somebody was able to finish Ocarina of Time through like uh the I think it was either Brawl. I think it might have been Super Smash Brothers Brawl has like a demo of Ocarina of Time in it, and they were able to beat Ocarina of Time within the time limit of the demo. Like that's kind of neat. Like I'm like, all right, that's cool. But I do agree with you though that like I prefer to watch a speed run where like someone plays the game more like legit and just like is able to just beat it really quickly because they just understand the game that well and they're able to just like, all right, I'm gonna go here, do that, beat the boss, get him out of my here. I'm just gonna run to the end, not taking damage, like that shit's cool.
I think that's a good transition for us into the remake and some things that have changed. So we've dabbled in it, but we can kind of get more into it. This game was remade in 2019. It was developed by Grezzo and published by Nintendo, and a lot of people love it. It is a high seller. I don't have the exact figures up here, but what are your thoughts overall on the remake?
So I do like the remake. I mean, it is the version that I finished. So I do appreciate it. That being said, I think like I mentioned before, I am interested in going back and playing the original. I think I am probably going to prefer the original over the remake. There is something like very charming and satisfying about the sprite work and the tiles and the just like the charming, almost not lo-fi, but just like the fact that they had to like fit this game onto a Game Boy and they had to be smart about it and be creative about it, and there's something like scrappy, I guess, about like the original Game Boy version that I really appreciate. That makes me look back on it with fondness, even though I haven't like finished it yet. That being said, like the original, I mean, the remake is still really good. I really like the kind of toy aesthetic of it. I think it looks really cute. The kind of like diorama-esque like feeling of the map. Like I think it's all really cute, and I think it's really unique. I think it gives the game an interesting flavor. I can understand if maybe some people are like, well, I don't see the original that way, so I don't, maybe not appreciate the visuals because of that. I get that. Maybe would have appreciated the remake to have taken a different turn with its visuals. But I still think it's like, again, I still think it's like a unique visual aesthetic. And I'm glad that they decided to carry it over into Echoes of Wisdom, because I think it's a visual style that is worth exploring. It's something that, again, just gives you a unique flavor, makes it feel kind of different. But I can't make too many direct comparisons to the original because my experience with the original is a bit limited. But like, I do enjoy the remake. I think that it from what I understand and from what I've seen of the original, it's pretty solid as a remake. But my opinion is always a remake should never replace the original. And even if you enjoy the remake, you should still go back and play the original. I can't think of any remake that I've played where I'm like, oh, that's it. There's no reason to go back to the original. The closest I can think of is maybe the Odin Sphere remake, and that's only because the original is included in the remake. But like, yeah, even for remakes like the original Resident Evil remake, a lot of people say that remake replaces the original, and I don't agree with that because they're different enough from each other that they're still like their own experiences. And with the Link's Awakening remake, it is, from what I understand, pretty close to the original. It's mostly the graphical facelift. But regardless, the original is a classic for a reason. And just because you enjoyed the remake doesn't mean you should ignore the original.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I was trying to think of like what's a game that was horrible or like so bad and then it got a remake and then like people kind of liked it? I couldn't think of one. I guess maybe like Shaq Fu, but even then, like, isn't that kind of worth playing for the novelty?
I don't think Shaq Fu was remade. That was turned into like a completely different thing.
Oh, it's a different game. Okay.
Yeah, it was originally a fighting game, and then they turned it into a beat 'em up. So it was like just a completely different thing.
I don't know. I can't think
Yeah,
of
I'm trying
any.
to think. I can't think of. Yeah, I can't think of any remakes where they bungled it and then they remade it and it was good. I can't think of anything because usually they remakes are for games that people already like. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. And I guess for like a remaster question, it's a little bit different. Like if you're asking me about Banjo Kazooie, like I will probably play the Xbox version every time I play it ever again from now on. But
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
I think that the differences are very minute, whereas the remake, like this is a unique take on the game. Like you said, like the toy box style is not it's nice, it's different, and it's not the same. It's a different way to experience the same game, and
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I have no problems with them using this art style. If I want to play the original art style, I will play the original, or even DX, which is another like changed version of the original. Not much, but like just that those added color sprites is good enough for me. Other things that were changed, it's a different take on the soundtrack too. Is like I think they're trying to go for like this kind of like tropical like island vibe. So like a lot of the instrumentation is kind of weird, but I don't hate it. I just think it's a different take. There are ones I like better and ones I don't like better.
Yeah.
Generally, I like the Game Boy chiptune. I'm a little more nostalgic for that era, like your Pokemon OST. Like that really hits home for me.
Me too.
And I think in the Game Boy version, those songs are really nice. Hearing Marin's version versus her singing. So they both have their perks.
I agree.
So
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the chip tunes. Like, it's just personal preference, but I grew up with chiptune music. It's what I like, like it's what I grew up with, and I have heard like comparisons between the music of the original and the remake, and most of the time I find myself going, "Yeah, I think the original sounded better."
yeah, I'm with you. But overall, still a good remake, and I can't be too mad
Yeah.
at it. If it gets people interested in the game, who am I to say? I think it's a good thing.
Agreed. I'd rather people play the remake and then not play Link's Awakening at all,
Right. All right, we can do some comparisons. What is one Zelda game or game in general? We already kind of talked about Shadow of the Colossus. I think that's an interesting analogy. But are there any other like games within the Zelda series that this game compares to?
I kind of brought it up before, but Majora's Mask.
Okay, how do you see this game being similar to / different from Majora's Mask?
They're both kind of like pseudo sequels. So I feel like Link's Awakening is kind of like a sequel to A Link to the Past, in the same way that Majora's Mask is a sequel to Ocarina of Time. But both of them also have these. It's kind of like taking something familiar and kind of twisting it into something, that you don't expect, right? So you have in Link's Awakening, you have like a bunch of Mario characters and stuff. Not so much like a ton of like Zelda iconography as much as like just you see like Goombas, you see like Mario himself, the Chain Chomps. And with Majora's Mask, it's more specifically twisting like Zelda iconography. You have like a bunch of characters that were like literal character models that were like ripped from Ocarina of Time, put in Majora's Mask. I think the implication there is actually like these are alternate universe versions of those characters, even though like technically speaking, it was probably just a way to save money, a way to cut down on development time. But I don't think that should take away from that interpretation because, regardless of like the reasoning behind it, it still fits with the themes and the story of the game. So I think a lot like the two games are like kind of doing a lot of like similar things to each other. But ultimately, I think like the most important thing for me is both games force you, challenge you to like ask questions that you wouldn't normally ask in a Zelda game, and kind of like recontextualizes like how you feel about what you're doing. Because like a really cool thing about Majora's Mask is when you beat the game, even though you've like done so much, right? Like in certain timelines, before you rewinded, you helped out all these people. You were able to like enrich their lives in so many different ways, but none of that is saved. When you are done with Majora's Mask, the only like actual canon, I guess, like things that you've done are whatever you did for those final 3 days, and that's it. And it kind of makes you question the validity of your actions up to that point. In the same way that in Link's Awakening, knowing that the world is a dream makes you question, what have you been doing this whole time? So I think the very not mercurial, but like kind of like temporary nature of both worlds. Well, Link's Awakening's world is more temporary compared to Majora, because Termina is still going to be there after you leave. So it's more so your actions that feel temporary in Majora's Mask. But they're both kind of playing with this idea that what you're doing may not bear much fruit. So ultimately, there are some things that you do that like that that's it, right? Like when you save the Windfish, that the island is gone. When you save Termina is saved. But the things that you did in between, like the beginning and the ending, may not necessarily have mattered. And I think that's rough to think about for a kid, especially. Like, it's kind of an adult thing to think about, that you may have put a lot of work into something and there may not be anything to show for it. And maybe you should think more about the actions themselves and what they meant to you rather than what you got out of it, in a material sense, and think more about what you got out of it emotionally or what you got out of it from an experiential point of view.
That's deep. I think though, I mean, because I grew up playing Majora's Mask in 2000, right? Like, and that game was so important to me back in the day. The only thing that you really do have to show for anything is your bomber's notebook. And that's your little recollection.
Yeah,
like,
true.
I did do something. I may not see it, but I did that. It's like almost like a memory log. It's your own little memoir. And I do see that here because, everything's so kind of hazy. I mean, like, yeah, Marin will follow you. One of the things that stands out to me, they actually changed this dialogue in the remake, but when you save the walrus, or sorry, when you tackle the walrus over, you have to talk to Marin at the beach. She's like, oh, what do you think's out there beyond the sea? I think there's anything out there. Sometimes I just want to be a seagull and just fly out. And then, she has this kind of like, this like existential, like, meandering, and then closes it off with like, oh, what's that? The walrus is sleeping. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll come with you. But in the remake, they say something like, oh, yeah, of course, let's go wake him up. I think that takes away from like some of the
somberness.
Yeah, some of the feeling of like, what's the point? Like like, why am I doing this? When you change that dialogue to like, yeah, Link, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
Not as like a criticism on the remake. It's just an interesting observation that I think that's something that the game kind of excels with.
Yeah. I think that's a fair thing to point out, though, because even like a little change like that can have a big effect on how it makes you feel.
Yeah. Uh, Even the question of reality. What is reality? What is real? Like it's not clear. Even in Majora's Mask, like how real is this? Like it's never really clear to me too. Like supposedly it's like when Link goes after Ocarina of Time, and this one is supposedly after Link leaves Link's like the Hyrule and Link to the Past. It's for like on a training mission, you know, just he's out at sea on a boat. Like how did this happen? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there is that like theory that like Link is dead in Majora's Mask. I don't personally believe that theory, but I do at least think like it's an interesting like way to think about it because Termina is like one L away from being terminal, and I think people have kind of like speculated that it's a bit of like a purgatory of sorts. I want to say I don't believe like that was the explicit intention, but regardless of what the intention is, like it's still interesting to think about, and it does kind of add to like the like, existential aspect of it of like, well, if this is just like a purgatory, if this is just like, you know, a world between worlds or something like that, what's the point? But like, I don't know.
There is something
I don't know.
about
What is the point?
the whole like Dante's Inferno, Sisyphus pushing a boulder up a hill for it to roll back down where the boulder's the moon. Like I could kind of see that.
For sure.
Yeah, and Link's Awakening, I don't know. I mean, I just think it's a really cool game. Like and it's something that most other Zelda games don't really strive for. They're a bit more like save the princess. There is no princess, you know. It's
In neither game. Yeah. No Zelda's save in either Link's Awakening or Majora. Another point of comparison for them.
Yeah, I just appreciate it for being something different at the end of the day, and yeah, taking itself seriously while not taking itself too seriously.
I've noticed that like it is like the Zelda games that are kind of atypical that tends to be like the ones that fans are like really passionate about. Like I see a lot of fans are like really passionate about Link's Awakening, really passionate about like Majora's Mask. And not to say that they aren't passionate about like the mainline games as well, but like it feels like these titles in particular, because they're a little strange, they're a little like not the norm, that like I see a more fervent love for them, you know? And it would be nice to see the series kind of like do stuff like this again.
Yeah, what's the last Zelda game that was really like that, in that kind of like cerebral, deep kind of way?
I have no idea. I these are the only ones that I can think of that make me like feel this way. Like none of the other ones really have that same effect.
I guess it's only two. Yeah, Link's Awakening
That's
and
it.
Majora's Mask. Yeah. So
The more I honestly, the more we talk about Link's Awakening, the more I'm like, this is probably like up there for me. It's like one of the best Zelda games. Like I already felt like pretty strongly about it, but talking about it more, I'm like, man, Link's Awakening really rules. What a fantastic little game.
yeah, it's incredible. I did not expect in going into it in this like chronological order that I would grow a newfound appreciation for it. I was almost apathetic going into it. I was like, oh, I gotta go to Link's Awakening. Like, damn it. Like, but it's a fun, quick little Zelda game with a good spin on it that also makes you think. You know,
A good spin slash.
A,
you might
a
say.
great spin slash, irreplicable apparently, not remakeable. Yeah, mine. I guess I do see it because I'm playing chronologically as like a Link to the Past sequel. So you
Yeah.
do see elements from Link to the Past here. You see the first three dungeon bosses scattered. You see Moldorm is your first dungeon fight, and then you have Lon Mola in a desert, and you have the Armos Knight like protecting like like one of the cave keys, and then even the nightmare fight, he transforms into a Ghanem at one point, and the final dungeon is Turtle Rock. So I think it's really interesting to see elements of Link to the Past. If you like at the time in '93, were like had just played Link to the Past or going into Link's Awakening, that are appreciable. It's not much, but I think it does speak to the fact that like Link still has that journey on his mind.
I'm pretty so. Originally, Link's Awakening was actually going to be a Game Boy port of A Link to the Past,
Okay.
and there was actually an old beta map that was found. I don't know if it was through the Giga Leak or something like that, but like fans actually found an old map of A Link to the Past on the Game Boy, and I think fans are trying to like reconstruct it or something, which is pretty neat. So I don't know, kind of interesting thing about it because like Link's Awakening's like ties or it's to A Link to the Past is actually much stronger than one might initially assume.
Interesting. I didn't think about that as far as like asset reusal or like how they changed it. Because even things are not one to one. It's like the Armos. They can only fit one on the screen. They can't do 6 hopping Armos.
Yeah, I think it would have been interesting to see kind of like A Link to the Past remake on Game Boy. That would have been cool. But ultimately, I am happier with the fact that we got A Link's Awakening instead. I'd rather like a brand new game than a down port of a game we already have.
Sure.
But still, would have been cool to see regardless.
Okay, we can now kind of go open topic. I don't know if you have anything we haven't discussed today that you'd be interested to talk about.
It might sound like a random question. Have you ever played Undertale or like heard of it?
Yeah, I played it. I only did the one playthrough. I know it changes depending how you play or if you play back to back. I did do one playthrough.
Yeah. I don't know why, but talking about Link's Awakening kind of reminded me of that game. I think maybe in like the fact that the game has this mechanic or like it's baked into the story that when you restart the game, like it's not when you like load a save, it's contextualized like in the story. It kind of reminds me about like again that kind of meta way of looking at Link's Awakening brought up earlier about how when you beat the game, it can kind of represent like the dream fading away, kind of representing when you beat a game and that world being vanished. The fact that like Undertale kind of it does a similar-ish thing with its meta storyline where you as the player are kind of like a character as well in the story in a strange way. And at times the game will like directly talk to you and be like, hey, if you get like the best ending in the game, a character will literally talk to you and be like, hey, the characters are happy. Things are good. I can't tell you what to do, but maybe just leave better left alone, like just maybe just walk away. You can restart everything if you want, but I don't know. Maybe just leave it alone. I think that's interesting. That the game kind of like can call you out almost because like there are a lot of players who will be like, no, I want to see all the game's content. And then, after they get that ending, they're going to restart and they're going to do another playthrough and do things differently. So, I don't know, just something that came to mind as we were talking about Link's Awakening.
Yeah, it's almost like a different realization of that concept. Like,
Yeah.
because there's not really much choice in Link's Awakening. You could just not finish, but like, I don't know who's going to do that. Everyone's going to play through. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe people play it and then think like, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe, maybe I should just allow the world to continue the way it is. I just don't think that way.
Honestly, I don't think that way either, but I feel like there probably is at least a few people out there who played through Link's Awakening and didn't want to finish it because they felt that way, because they could see the writing on the wall and they were like, I love these characters and I love this world, and I don't want to see it like fade away like that. So I'm just going to put the game down. My sister did something similar, not for a game, but for a show, an anime called Yu Yu Hakusho.
Oh, I love it.
She could kind of see that like in the final season that things were going to go bad. And she's like, I love these characters so much. I'm not going to finish the show. They're in a good spot right now. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'm like, you know what? That's fair. If that's what you want to do. So, it's interesting to think about the way that we kind of like have this relationship with these characters, and kind of in a way going against what was the intention, right? Like, I would imagine the creator would like, no, I want you to finish it. Like, I want you to see the end. But at the end of the day, we do what we want with these works.
I'll tell you one guy who doesn't want to finish this. Whoever's playing this long play, he's been stuck in the color dungeon for like 20 minutes. There is one puzzle in there that's like brutal. It's like 9 blue and red switches. So I think
I remember that. Yeah. I think I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm pretty. Yeah, they added that as well in the Switch remake. So that's funny.
Cool. Link's Awakening. Should he dream? Should he stay dreaming, or should we wake him up? It is a fantastic game, and I'm glad that you're able to appreciate it and also share that sentiment too. I think hearing you talk about this game last time on the Link to the Past interview got me a little more excited for it too. So thank you.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Yeah, it's a great game, and it deserves its flowers.
By all means. And look at that. The guy solves the color dungeon just as we wrap up. We'll have to see it.
Good for him.
All right, Daniel Santos, thank you so much. Sign us off, Captain Keaton.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Yep, and we'll talk soon with more musical melodies in Ocarina of Time.